Hi, everybody. Claire Wasserman, founder, author of Ladies Get Paid If You Don't Know Us. Well, now you do. We are an educational platform, global community, and a course book that is all about helping women level up professionally, financially. I want us to have whatever our dreams, as big as our dreams can be, but how do we get there? Starts with money, right? Freedom, financial freedom, in all of its forms. So Suzanne, my love, I'm going to hand it over to you if you would like to give a shout out to yourself. I think the work you're doing is just great. And any words of wisdom for our job seekers here, I'll let you take it away for the next few minutes.
Excellent. Thank you, Claire. Good morning, afternoon, wherever you are. I'm here to say hello and to tell you to breathe because it will be okay. Everything does work out. And as one of the coaches that I follow, she says everything is figure outable. So I would love for you all to take a breather and know that it's going to work out. My background is very unique. I am a self-confessed job hopper. I've had over 24 jobs and I'm only 22. Not really, but I'm not that old. I actually absolutely love interviewing. I love the search. And at first, it used to bother me. But now I understand if something's not a good fit, then make that choice to say it's not a good fit and move on. My background includes working in television, working in sales, and the last 10 years, it's been talent acquisition consulting. So I go with different companies, I help them disrupt their current, say, environment and hire candidates, not just based on their skill set, but also based on if they're a cultural fit and making sure that the hiring managers and the candidate agree that they will be a good fit for the particular organization. By day, I consult with companies, and then in the evening, I love working with candidates on their interviewing and presentation skills. For those of you who have not heard of Toastmasters, please go to toastmasters.org. A lot of folks who are in transition, they come to this organization. It helps them think on their feet in addition to preparing for their particular interview. I am here to tell you things will work out. And a coach always has a coach. And one of my coaches I follow says, this is a mantra you should tell yourself. I am the executive producer of opportunities coming my way beyond my wildest dreams. Write that down. I am the executive producer of opportunities coming my way beyond my wildest dreams. Back to you, Claire.
No, back to you, Suzanne. That was great. If you could talk a little bit about how people can get in touch with you, if you were looking, if you're available to connect with folks and how you work with them, let's get you paid. You're muted, so let's see how I can unmute you. That's weird. I don't know why all of a sudden you got muted. Ask to unmute. There we go.
Okay, perfect. I will put my LinkedIn contact, but you can always email me at suzannetalks@gmail.com. And then in the chat, I will put in my LinkedIn connection, and I'm happy to assist in any way I can.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And I realized when you mute yourself, then I have to unmute you after. So I just learned that. Okay. It's only been like 1,000 years of doing Zoom, but we got it now.
Perfect.
And I see that you put it in the great. You put it in the chat. All right, everybody. Now for my little spiel about interviewing. I have lots to say on this front, but I'll only speak, I think, for the next 15 minutes or so. And then I forgot to mention, I do want to answer some questions that have been submitted since in the registration, people had really good questions this time. Actually, you always have good questions. So let me start in the interviewing process. Nerves, okay? Because you could have the best presentation in the world, but if you are just so freaking nervous that none of it comes out or doesn't come out the way that you want, then it was no good. So I would love for us all to think about interviewing as an opportunity to get to share more than just what's on paper. Thank goodness, right? Like, we are 360, three-dimensional human beings here. I mean, we are so much more than just, whatever the couple of sentences that they saw in our resume, our bullet points, right? So first of all, just being grateful for the opportunity that we get to make a human connection. Also, and it's not about this job. No, it's about this person that you are connecting to. You never know. I get chills because you never know where this person that you're interviewing with, where they're going to go. They they will eventually leave this company and go elsewhere. And so whatever happens in this interaction with them, you may end up finding yourself working with them later on in something else. So it's about making a really good impression, human connection with that person. And whether or not this particular opportunity works out, there are so many variables at play here that really have nothing to do with you, okay? Or even with the person you're interviewing with. It has everything to do with the bottom line. So it's just about human connection. I also would love us to think of this interview as practice for something else, something bigger. We're going to continually be pushing, hopefully pushing the needle for ourselves, right? The goalposts will always keep moving, raising the stakes. We want to challenge ourselves in our lives. So whatever this interview is, this experience right now that you might be gearing up for, it may be a very big deal to you today, but let's take a really long lens in a whole lifetime. It's just one experience. So in all the things that I do, whether I'm getting on a stage or, going on camera for, Good Morning America or whatever, I'm imagining that I am practicing for my next opportunity. And that's all that is. And that's going to help, I think, lessen some of the pressure that you have on this. Also, just removing this pressure to be perfect, okay? We don't want to be perfect because otherwise we're not going to grow. And that's also an expectation of just unreasonable pressure. So I actually would go in really looking for, where can I improve in this experience? Whether I'm coming in and I'm, going to be a little bit less nervous next time, or do my best to be a little less nervous next time. Or I'm going to try to, come in with really, really interesting questions to ask them, right? So already have the expectation, not of perfection, but of progress. Where can you find it? So that's, first and foremost, let's just hopefully get a little bit of perspective on the experience. Also, the next things I want us to really think about is, in every question that we're asked in an interview, what are they really trying to understand about us? So there's only so many questions, that you're probably going to get asked, right? Like, how many curveballs are going to be thrown your way? And of course, in the chat, or wherever you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, please do comment if, questions you've been asked that maybe did surprise you. But I would love us to anticipate ahead of time of the things that they're going to be asking us. Can we read between the lines to figure out what are they actually trying to understand? So here's a good example. What's your greatest weakness? Are they really trying to understand what your greatest weakness is? Not really. They want to see how self-aware you are, but also from that self-awareness, can you pivot? Actually, it's about how you answer the question, not even the content of the response. So in taking that, here was a weakness, but here's what I learned from my weakness. And here's how, now what I'm excited to do for you. Okay. So they're watching your kind of this is not meant to frighten you, by the way, but they're watching your performance just as much as they are listening to what you're saying. Okay. So I'm going to just focus on a couple of questions that you may be asked, and then ways that you can think about responding. So the first question is this: tell me about yourself, right? It's like, gosh, how much time do we have to respond to that question, right? So in this, I think part of what they're looking for is your ability to be succinct in your response. And by the way, when you practice all of this, I find a great way to practice is by simply writing it all down, even just by handwriting, because then you can really figure out, based on how you would respond, how to edit yourself. Okay. So in tell us about yourself, how do we narrow down our quote life story? Well, first and foremost, remember that they already saw your resume. They saw your cover letter. Okay, there's a reason you have this interview. So I think what they want to understand about you is how this next job opportunity fits in to your path of growth in your career. Good structure to use. Present, okay, so starting where you currently are, then going to the past, and then talking about the future. Okay, so in the present, right, that's very, very quick. Here's where I'm at. The meat of the answer is in the past, but I would really talk about your ability to learn. And you've heard me say this in previous sessions before, because I just can't underscore this enough, especially as a hirer. And those of you who have hired before, you know, coachable people are everything. Because if there's a little danger in hiring somebody who knows everything, right, or has done it all, because they're going to be set in their ways. No, we want to work with people who can learn quickly. So in describing your past, you know, of the achievements you've had and you know, already have maybe two specific achievements that best demonstrate why you're ready for this next job. Don't just say what you did, but say what you learned from it, about yourself, about the way that you work, about the industry. Okay. Always digging into results, of course. But I think being able to tell the story of growth is going to really help demonstrate to them the potential you have for how far you can even go in the future. Speaking of which, that's how you're going to round it out, right? Why this job opportunity specifically? If you can really show that you did your research, this is not just, I've just applied to every job, right? But, you know, finding something that the CEO said in a podcast, right? Or in a press article or a thing on the website, values, right? And then bringing it back to you, of course, how you have personally demonstrated that. That's going to make you stand out, okay? So that's, you know, it's a way essentially of connecting the dots in your career trajectory, right? Like explaining the roles you've had, what led you to them, and how this next job fits into that. But do keep in mind, it's at the end of the day, it's not, you know, make sure it's not about what the job can do for you. It's about what you can do for the job. So it's not just, I think you're a good fit in my path for growth, right? So I do want to be clear that even though what you are showing to them is your trajectory of, you know, potential and growth, ultimately you do have to position it as, here's what I do for you. Okay. So that's big. I also think if they, you know, ask you about where do you see yourself in 5 years, again, the first thing is let's filter it through what are they actually trying to find out about you here. And I would say they want to know if they're going to be a stopgap for you, right? How loyal are you going to be in this next job? And this is a tough one because on one hand, you want to show that you're an ambitious person and that you want to grow. Okay. But on the other hand, you know, you also want to show that you are not going to be, you know, hopping from them to something else. So in a way, I don't want us to be too specific about a 5-year plan. I instead would say, here are the things that I want to learn about, areas I want to grow, in which I want to grow, you know, people that I want to connect with, networks that I want to develop, right? Skills that I want to gain. Again, so it's more about potential and how they are aligned with potential. So that's an interesting one of like not being too specific, but also, you know, you don't want to be too bullshitty about it too. In a funny way, actually, I shouldn't say a funny way. I should say politicians kind of do this well. It's called the art of the pivot, right? Where they might get asked a question. They have a certain agenda that they want to express. And so if you can study, maybe not just politicians, but anybody who's done media interviews where you see them, you know, respond to the question, but then again, pivot to the message that they want. If you can study that, that should give you some good pointers in how we can handle, you know, questions again, where they're asking us something where they might want to pin us down, but we want to be able to express other things about ourselves. Another question that might be that you may get asked that could potentially trip you up is, you know, tell me about a time where you handled a conflict or a difficult situation. I think this is a little similar to that. What is your weakness? So again, what is here that they want to actually learn about you? Self-awareness, right? I think problem solving and how you work with other people. So and again, holding this balance of knowing your role in conflict, never blaming other people, but also we want to keep things moving. We want to make sure that our response is majority positive, right? So I would say, map out ahead of time how you're gonna respond to the difficult situation. Good framework to use. I've mentioned this before in previous sessions, but it's worth another mention. STAR method, situation, S, okay, for the STAR, T, task, A, action, and then R, results. But I would really, really, really make this about, again, your ability to contain multitudes. And so what I mean by this is your ability to stay focused, deal with different personalities. If you're going to problem solve, maybe demonstrating that you can find support, that you can be vulnerable, that you assign good intent to people. So just as you analyze your responses, because again, you're going to practice beforehand and you're going to write it all out, just make sure whatever you're saying is majority positive. When you practice this, get some feedback. We're all too close to ourselves. Last question that might be, actually 2 more questions that might kind of trip us up is, why'd you leave your job? And let's say you left your job because, well, you were forced to leave your job, you were fired, or the boss you had was toxic, or it was a bad situation, right? Again, majority of the answer here, it needs to be positive. So I would say, I want a job with more responsibility, and I'm ready for that challenge. Okay. Or I wasn't considering a move, but I saw this job description. I read more about your company. It's clear that, your mission and culture is aligned with my values. Or they were restructuring. And I was caught up in the restructuring, fortunately or unfortunately, whatever, we're coming out of a time of COVID where if you were let go, there is no longer a taboo associated with it. Everything's in flux, so I wouldn't stress too much about it. I also would not go into too much detail about it at all. And I would never, never, never be negative in this, you don't need to. It's implied if you're like, your company is really well aligned with my values, and it's important for me to work with a company that culturally is a good fit or whatever. Like that says enough potentially about how you feel about your last company. We do not need to go into specifics at all. Okay. And then the last part, the last question that could potentially trip you up is, you've never done this before. Right? You're new to the workforce, or you're a non-traditional candidate, you're pivoting, you're really junior. Okay. So the 3 things I think you need to demonstrate here, you know what it takes to succeed in this role, even though you may never have done it before. You have great people skills and you're a fast learner. So, and I've mentioned this in previous sessions, but I'm really going to keep underscoring it. Talk to real people who have had this role before or similar role, and tell them that you have had you've had really in-depth conversations with these folks specific to the challenges that they've encountered in this role. And you can speak to those, right? Like, I can see ahead what the learning curve is going to look like. And let me walk you through a few past experiences I've had that, though they may not be exactly the same, the skills are absolutely transferable. And I feel confident in that because I've had conversations with these people, right? This isn't just, trust me, no, like you are ready for the challenges because you can speak specifically to the challenges. And that in general is just good advice when we are networking with folks, trying to learn about future potential job paths or roles we might take on. Ask them about the tough stuff, not the like, what do you love about your job? Like, not the ideal, not what are your best days, but what are your worst days? That is especially good advice for anybody contemplating becoming an entrepreneur, right? If you want to start your own business, really dig into what is going to be most difficult in this role, to see if you are ready for that and if that challenge even interests you to begin with. Then, by the way, so you're, to kind of just wrap that up in terms of, I have the transferable skills, but I also want to tell you why being an outsider actually brings me unique perspective. And if you have any examples of that too, of times in the past where, you were new to something or the only one, you didn't have the experience before. Yes, you're a fast learner, but also, is there a benefit to hiring somebody who is not fully entrenched in the experience? I mean, first and foremost, diverse networks are the strongest networks. So in the fact that you may not have that traditional path, you're going to be bringing with you a whole network of potential, whatever it is, could be vendors, could be, referrals to potentially becoming new employees. Like, you could underscore the fact that you bring diversity with you. So anyway, there's, it's like you address the fact that, yes, you are new and, you're going to be able to make up for that, but also, can we demonstrate why this is a potential plus? And by the way, if you haven't been a manager before and they're worried about that, then just talk about the books you've read. Maybe you took a class, but be specific. That's the thing. Don't just say, I've talked to people where I've read the books, or like, dig into that and at least bring forward something that you learned from that conversation or from that book. Okay. There's obviously so much more to talk about here when it comes to interviewing, but I think we should that should be a whole webinar. I should mention, by the way, we do have an How to Get the Job master course. And as part of that, there's a toolkit that has a bunch of these questions in it. And if you open up your email when I send it to you later today with the recording, you will get 50% off of the job course. Okay, let me respond to a couple of questions that were submitted beforehand. I always like to do those. And then we'll do our breakouts. But thank you for listening to my little speech. Okay. So somebody asked, I see a lot of employers laying off employees, then posting new jobs on job boards. Is it all right to ask in interviews if a company has done any layoffs and if they plan on doing more layoffs in the future? Yes, absolutely. I mean, one great thing to do in the research as you're deciding if this is the right company for you, because this is a relationship that has to go both ways. So you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. Do look at how long, not only how many layoffs, and what's going on with the layoffs, but also how long does it take for somebody to get promoted, and what's a kind of typical path of momentum? What does that look like at that company? So in looking at the employees, how long have they stayed? You can ask them these questions, but you can also just do, look at LinkedIn. How long does somebody typically stay at the company? How long does it take for them to get promoted? What do promotions look like? What kind of person gets promoted? Right? These are all really, really great things to ask. But, when you ask these questions, you can give them a little bit of context about why you're asking them and use it as an opportunity to look really good. So meaning, my next job, it's important to me that I'm here for the long haul, right? So I'm curious, what is a typical tenure? And curious if you've been impacted by restructuring, or, what does path of growth look like at your company? So notice that I, yes, asked this very important question, but I also used it as an opportunity to tell you that I want to be here for, again, I want to be loyal, and I also am ambitious. Okay. So I would recommend every time that you ask a question, use it as an opportunity to look good. Okay. So somebody had asked, I get into interviews, I make it pretty far, but in the end, I basically get it was such a hard decision. They really liked you and see how great your soft skills are, but they've decided that they want someone with exact experience. How can I push past that stage of interviewing? My experience doesn't change over the course of the interview process. I'm honest about my background, so they know that I may not have done the exact job. So hopefully I answered this question already to telling them that you have spoken to people who have had this exact experience and you know exactly what it takes to do the job. I'd be very curious to see, come report back to me after if that works. Okay. How do you explain on your resume a gap of 6 months if you were actively working on applications and going through processes that are long and intense for senior level roles while trying to find the next best thing? I think I kind of addressed this in the last meetup that we did. But it's funny, you say, how do you explain on your resume a gap of 6 months? Well, you explain, you just tell them what you were doing. And again, taking what you were doing, and then can you apply it to why this makes you an even more attractive candidate for this role, right? What you learned during this process, it required extreme patience, right? Or, being able to juggle multiple things at once. So you be honest about it. Tell that, and you can put this on your resume as well. I mean, even LinkedIn now, I think, has an option for career gaps. Explain what you were doing. It humanizes you. But again, use it as an opportunity to show how this makes you an even better candidate. Okay. I have a breadth of experience and have several different base versions of resumes. Good. That's what we want. I also enjoy doing many things professionally. I'm really needing to narrow my focus and search so that I can better prioritize my time with applications and networking. Ooh, I have so much to say on this. And in fact, this should probably be its own talk. I would say if we're having a little bit of trouble, well, first and foremost, excellent. We always want to have a base version of our resume and our cover letter, and then you tailor it based on the jobs you're applying to, integrating keywords from the job descriptions. So you already got that. That's fabulous. I think the question you're asking here really is finding the right opportunities for what you're interested in and what your strengths are, because you could go in a lot of different directions. I would say two things. Number one, whatever lights you up, okay, whatever brings you energy as you are working on it. A great way to figure that out is to just look at your past. Like whenever we imagine the future and what we want, we oftentimes get very stressed about it because it's the unknown. So how about we just look at the data, right? What we've done in the past, not even necessarily professionally, personally, on the side, the things that just come naturally to us, the things we're doing when we are not being paid, the rabbit holes we go down when we are on our phones looking at articles, like what are problems you want to solve, curiosities you have. There's really good information in there that you can then start putting together to see if this is a direction you want to go in. So again, kind of innate skills, strengths, energy, that's fabulous. But I think I'm going to say the word again, growth. Where do you in your life, of the things that you are working on yourself, again, whether it's skills or people that you meet or experiences that you have, things you learn about, where could you see growth happening for you? What are you interested in? But then go and see who's paying the most, because I want to make sure you're aligning what you do where there's actual traction. So for example, you may have, 3, 4, or 5 things that all seem quite interesting. You could go down the path, but which is the one where there are a lot of companies hiring? Where are these companies investing in? Where's the future? Where's the future happening? Because if you align your work with the future, you just raise the glass ceiling for yourself infinitely. And I don't want us ever to go in a direction where, it feels like we're now getting, stuck, not because of us, but simply because the industry is sorting itself out and hasn't figured out its own direction of growth, right? Okay, we are at time. I know these things go so quickly. By the way, I'm seeing some good questions being answered here. So I'm going to take a look at those questions as you all are doing breakouts, because we'll do breakouts for the next 20 minutes and then we'll come back together. So in these breakouts, I would love us to share kind of 3 things. So number 1, kind of who we are as best we can. Number 2, problems that we like to solve. Okay. And number 3, what are the opportunities that we're looking for? And it is totally fine if you do not have an answer for any of these things. You're adults, they're going to figure out something to talk about. But here's a good way of just beginning. And if you feel comfortable sharing contact information and co-promoting each other on LinkedIn, this can go a huge, Allison, hopefully you know who you are. Yeah, but that's an that can then really spark some existential crises, so that could be the hardest question of all. But if you feel comfortable sharing, exchanging information specifically for LinkedIn and co-promoting each other and making each other introductions to one another's networks on LinkedIn from today's session, help each other get opportunities, but in that be as specific as possible, as best as you can for what it is you're looking for. So people do know how to help you. We're going to do 2 to 3 people per breakout for about 10 minutes. We're going to swap it. We're going to do it, I think, about twice and then come back together. And already, as always, I'm here. You can come back to me if you have any questions. I'm going to stop the record. So for those who are watching the recording, I hope you can make it live to our next meetup, which is not going to be next week because I'm in Hawaii, but it's every Monday after that. Yeah, I'm seeing Suzanne. Here you go. Okay, so let us do breakout rooms. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so again, who we are, what we, problems we like to solve, and then what we are looking for. Okay. All right.